You dare defy me! I do not. Get out of my way! I will not.
The morning sun painted the city in golden light, but for Madame Claudia, it was just another chance to display her status. She stepped out of her mansion, her silk dress shimmering, her diamond earrings catching the light. Everything about her spoke of wealth and power, the polished car waiting by her gate, the personal assistant trailing behind, the way she lifted her chin as if the whole world should bow. Claudia lived for appearances. To her, money wasn't just security, was proof that she was above everyone else. She believed respect could be bought, and anyone without her kind of wealth was hardly worth her time. Servants rushed when she called, shopkeepers bent over backward to please her, and she expected nothing less from strangers. Her smile was rare, reserved only for people of equal status or higher. To those beneath her, she offered cold stares or sharp words, and in her heart, Claudia thought this was only right. After all, she often told herself, if you don't show people who's in charge, they'll forget their place. Not far from Claudia's world of silk and glass, another woman prepared for the day. Her name was Amina. She tied a faded scarf around her head, wiped sweat from her brow, and pushed her tricycle out into the street. The metal groaned, the wheels scratched against the ground, but this tricycle was her lifeline. Amina was no stranger to hardship. She had buried her husband years ago, left with 2 children and her aging mother to care for. Every morning, before the city fully woke, she pedaled through crowded roads, carrying passengers who trusted her with their safety. Her arms were strong from years of pulling, her back bent but steady. Her clothes were plain, but her eyes told a different story. Eyes that held courage, eyes that carried love for her children, eyes that refused to give up no matter how heavy life became. For Amina, every ride was more than just a fare. It was food for her children, medicine for her mother, school fees for her son and daughter. The tricycle was her survival, her dignity, her fight against despair. The sun rose higher that day, the heat pressing down like fire on the city. Dust rose with every passing car, horns filled the air, and the streets pulsed with noise. Claudia, impatient as always, decided to dismiss her driver for the day. She didn't want to be stuck in traffic with her luxury car. Instead, she waved down a tricycle, convinced it would be faster. Amina stopped beside her. Her body glistened with sweat, but she gave a polite nod. Good morning, ma. Where are you going? Claudia wrinkled her nose, fanning herself with a silk handkerchief. Just drive. I don't have all day. The ride began, and within minutes tension sparked. Claudia complained about the speed, about the dust, about the way Amina steered through traffic. Do you even know how to drive properly? She snapped. Amina kept calm. Sorry, ma. The road is crowded. I'll get you there safely. But the words did not soothe Claudia. When they finally arrived, she tossed a few bills into Amina's hand. Amina looked down, her heart sinking. The fare was short. Ma, the money is not complete, she said softly, wiping her forehead. Claudia froze, offended that a tricycle rider dared to question her. What did you say? The fare is a little more than this, Amina explained gently. The arrogance in Claudia's eyes flared. Do you know who I am? How dare you question me? Before Amina could respond, Claudia raised her hand and struck her across the face. The slap cracked through the air, sharp and merciless. The street fell silent. Pedestrians stopped mid. Drivers slowed their cars. Whispers rose in the air. Amina staggered, her cheek burning with pain, her eyes stinging with humiliation. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, but her dignity held her still. With trembling hands, she placed the incomplete fare on the seat and stepped away. Her voice was quiet, but steady. May God judge between us. She turned, lifted her tricycle handles, and walked away. Her back straight though her heart ached. The crowd murmured in disapproval. Some shook their heads at Claudia, others glared, but no one dared to confront her. Claudia, however, felt no shame. She adjusted her silk scarf, lifted her chin, and stepped into the lobby of a nearby hotel. To her, the matter was settled. She believed she had taught a lesson to a disrespectful tricycle rider. Yet, as the whispers followed her into the building, one truth lingered in the air. Power built on arrogance never lasts, and somewhere deep inside Amina's wounded heart, a silent strength grew, stronger strength that would one day return to face Claudia again. That evening, Amina pushed her tricycle into the small compound she called home. The walls were cracked, the roof patched with rusty sheets. But it was the place where her children waited for her. Her daughter, barely 12, rushed to meet her. "Mama, welcome," she cried, wrapping her small arms around her waist. Her son followed, carrying a jug of water, his face dusty from errands. Amina forced a smile, though her cheeks still throbbed from the slap earlier. She didn't want her children to see her pain. Instead, she hugged them close, drawing strength from their innocent joy. Later, when the children settled with the simple meal she had prepared, boiled yam and palm oil, Amina sat in the corner, watching them eat. Her heart ached with love. Every coin she earned went into keeping them alive and giving them a chance at a better future. But the day's humiliation gnawed at her. She whispered to herself, "God, give me the strength to endure. Let my children never taste the shame I felt today." After washing dishes, she stepped into her mother's small room. The old woman lay weak on a thin mattress, coughing softly. Amina adjusted her blanket, pressed her hand to her forehead, and reassured her, "Mama, don't worry. I'll buy your medicine tomorrow." She knew she might have to work extra hours to afford it, but this was her life sacrifice, sweat, and endless prayer. Across town, Claudia's world glittered on the outside but cracked on the inside. She sat in her spacious living room, sipping wine as servants arranged dinner on a long dining table she rarely shared with anyone. Her husband, a businessman always traveling, hadn't spoken to her kindly in months. They lived under the same roof but felt like strangers. He criticized her temper, called her cold, and often avoided her altogether. Claudia told herself she didn't care, but deep down, the silence cut her. Her only daughter studied abroad, far away, their calls brief and distant. The girl often avoided her mother's lectures about perfection and success. Claudia filled the emptiness with shopping, parties, and showing off her wealth. Yet, no matter how much she bought, the loneliness always returned when the lights went out. That night, she replayed the slap in her mind, not with guilt but with a sense of control. To her, putting people in their place was power, but she ignored the small voice that whispered, "What if one day life turns the tables?" As the week passed, the city prepared for Labor Day. Posters hung on walls, radio stations buzzed with announcements, and workers whispered about the big celebration in the central square. It was the one day each year when ordinary laborers, drivers, cleaners, farmers, builders, tricycle riders were honored for their contribution to society. For Amina, the day meant little more than another chance to earn fares. She couldn't afford to rest. Yet, her children were excited. "Mama," her son said, "our teacher told us Labor Day is about people like you. Maybe one day they will celebrate you too." Amina chuckled softly, shaking her head. "No, my son, I am just a tricycle rider. No one notices people like us." But in her heart, the words lit a quiet spark. On the other side of the city, Claudia's invitation to the Labor Day ceremony arrived. She was listed as a special guest of honor because of her donations to certain organizations. To her, it was just another stage to flaunt her wealth, another chance to be seen as important. She didn't think twice about the meaning of the day. She didn't see it as a celebration of dignity, of sweat, of sacrifice. To her, it was only a show on another platform to feed her pride. But fate had already set its plan in motion. The same day she prepared to parade her influence, she would come face to face with the very woman she had humiliated, and the memory of that slap would return to her with a power she could not control. The sun blazed brightly on Labor Day. Streets overflowed with people wearing colorful clothes, holding banners, and marching with pride. Music filled the air, drums rolled, and the city square buzzed with excitement. Workers from every corner of the city gathered to celebrate their dignity and strength. Madame Claudia stepped out of a black SUV, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. She wore a flowing gown of royal blue silk, her jewelry sparkling like stars. Cameras flashed as reporters turned to capture her grand entrance. She smiled proudly, soaking in the attention. To her, this was her stage. She was led to the front row of the ceremony, where dignitaries, politicians, and honored guests sat. The master of ceremonies welcomed her with praise, calling her a respected patron of community development. Claudia's chin lifted higher. She whispered to herself, "Yes, this is where I belong." But fate had prepared a surprise. The announcer's voice rang out. "Today we celebrate not only the powerful but also the hardworking men and women who carry this city on their shoulders. Among them is a woman whose dedication and sacrifice inspire us all." A hush fell as a figure walked onto the stage. It was Amina. She wore a simple but neat gown, her scarf tied firmly. Her hands still bore the marks of labor. Her face carried lines of struggle, but her eyes shone with quiet dignity. She walked slowly, each step heavy with the memory of the slap she had endured. But her back remained straight. Claudia's heart stopped. Her wine-red lips parted slightly, but no words came. Her fingers clutched her handbag tightly. It can't be. It's her. As Amina took her place on the stage, the crowd cheered. People rose to their feet, clapping, whistling, shouting her name. She had been chosen as one of the model workers for the year, a symbol of endurance and courage. Claudia felt heat crawl up her neck. The memory of that day, the slap, the whispers, the shame she had dismissed returned like a knife twisting in her chest. Her pride urged her to keep her face calm, but inside, her stomach churned. From the stage, Amina's eyes swept across the crowd. For a brief moment, they landed on Claudia. Recognition flickered, sharp and quick. But instead of anger, Amina looked past her with calm strength, as though Claudia were nothing more than a shadow from her past. That composure pierced Claudia more than any insult could. She had expected hatred, or maybe a sign of bitterness, but the quiet dignity in Amina's face made Claudia feel small, exposed, and weak. When the applause finally quieted, the announcer handed Amina the microphone. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice carried strong and steady. "I am not a teacher, or a doctor, or a businesswoman," she began. "I am a tricycle rider. Every day I wake before sunrise, pushing myself through the heat, the rain, and the dust to provide for my children and my mother. Many times I have felt invisible, as though my work meant nothing. But today I stand here, not just for myself, but for all workers who fight silently to keep their families alive." The crowd erupted in applause, their voices echoing across the square. Tears shone in people's eyes. Amina continued, her tone trembling with emotion. "Life has not been kind. I have known hunger. I have known shame. I have felt the sting of humiliation. But I have also known strength. I learned that dignity is not in riches, but in the courage to rise every morning and keep moving forward." Her words struck Claudia like thunder. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her throat tightening. For the first time, guilt crept into her heart. The very woman she had slapped and belittled was now standing before a whole city, celebrated for the very dignity Claudia had tried to crush. The audience rose to their feet again, clapping and cheering, some crying openly. Amina bowed her head, humbled by the response, but her eyes glistened with gratitude. Claudia's hands trembled in her lap. She forced herself to clap, but her palms felt heavy. Pride and shame wrestled inside her. Pride whispered, "Don't let her win." Shame whispered louder, "You were wrong." As the ceremony continued, Claudia sat in silence, her mind miles away. Every word spoken about the value of labor, every praise given to workers, felt like arrows piercing her chest. How could this be happening? She thought. Me, in the presence of the very woman I humiliated, and now she stands above me, honored, respected. She remembered the look in Amina's eyes that day after the slap pain mixed with quiet strength. At the time, Claudia had dismissed it, but now she understood that strength had brought Amina here, while her own arrogance had brought her shame. Still, she could not admit it, not yet. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and forced herself to smile at the cameras. But deep inside, the battle raged. By the end of the program, the workers were honored with medals and certificates. Amina stood proudly, holding hers close to her chest. Her children, invited by surprise, ran to hug her, tears streaming down their cheeks. The sight melted the hearts of everyone present. The crowd cheered louder than ever. "Labor, labor, labor," they chanted, honoring the dignity of workers. Claudia's eyes burned as she watched. Her heart ached with something she had not felt in years: envy, yes, but also regret. She could not escape the truth. In this moment, the tricycle rider she once considered beneath her had become greater than her. And though the program ended with music and celebration, Claudia's spirit carried no joy. Instead, she walked back to her SUV with shaking steps, her mind clouded with guilt, pride, and the haunting memory of the slap. She did not know it yet, but the true test of her heart had only just begun. That night, Claudia lay awake in her king-sized bed. The chandelier above her sparkled softly, but her eyes were fixed on the ceiling, wide and restless. The applause for Amina still rang in her ears. Every word, every cheer, replayed like a drumbeat in her mind. She turned onto her side, pulling the silk sheets tightly around her, but sleep would not come. Instead, images flashed in her head: the day of the slap, the shock in Amina's eyes, the whispers of the crowd, and then, today's sight of Amina being celebrated, standing tall, surrounded by respect and love. Claudia's chest tightened. For the first time, shame clawed at her, yet pride fought back fiercely. Why should I feel guilty? I am the one with power, not her. She should be grateful I even used her tricycle. But another voice whispered, soft and piercing, "You were wrong. You wounded her, not just with your hand, but with your arrogance." Claudia pressed her hands to her ears, as if she could block out the voice, but the silence of the mansion only made it louder. Over the following days, the inner battle grew heavier. At public events, she wore her usual proud smile, but when she returned home, she found herself pacing, restless, haunted by guilt. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she would wake in a cold sweat, hearing the echo of her own voice. "How dare you question me?" Followed by the crack of the slap. It was as if her conscience had finally awakened, refusing to let her escape. Meanwhile, Amina's life went on. Though the ceremony had brought her new recognition, neighbors congratulated her, strangers greeted her warmly, and her children looked at her with renewed pride. But Amina carried no bitterness. When people asked if she resented the arrogant woman who had once humiliated her, she only shook her head. One evening, as her children sat by her side, her son asked, "Mama, do you hate that rich woman, the one who slapped you?" Amina looked into his young eyes, her heart heavy with the weight of teaching him the right path. She touched his cheek gently and said, "No, my son, hate is poison. If I carry it, it will destroy me. Dignity is not lost by another's action. It is kept by how we choose to respond." Her daughter leaned against her shoulder. "But Mama, she hurt you. Doesn't it make you angry?" Amina sighed softly. "Yes, it hurt. But if I let anger rule me, I will lose my peace. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is strength." Her words sank deep into her children's hearts. In that moment, Amina wasn't just surviving life, she was shaping the future of her family with wisdom and grace. While Amina embraced peace, Claudia's world began to crumble under unseen weight. The story of the Labor Day honorees spread across the city. Newspapers published Amina's photo, praising her as a symbol of courage and dignity. Radio stations replayed parts of her speech, and social media buzzed with admiration. But along with the praise came whispers. Some people remembered the slap incident and shared it quietly. "Isn't that the same woman Madame Claudia insulted?" "Yes, I saw it with my own eyes." Soon, the whispers reached Claudia's social circle. At parties and gatherings, she noticed the change. Once, people had rushed to greet her. Now, some avoided her gaze, others exchanged knowing looks behind her back. A close friend finally confronted her over lunch. "Claudia, did you really slap that tricycle rider? People are talking. They say she's the same woman who was honored on Labor Day." Claudia's face burned. She forced a laugh, trying to brush it off. "People exaggerate. You know how rumors spread." But inside, her stomach knotted. She could see the doubt in her friend's eyes. The respect she once commanded so icily was slipping away, and at night, the guilt grew heavier. She dreamt of standing in a crowd, only to hear voices chanting Amina's name while turning their backs on her. She dreamt of her daughter, looking at her with shame. Each nightmare left her shaken, her once unshakable pride crumbling piece by piece. One evening, Claudia sat alone on her balcony, staring at the city lights. She sipped her wine, but it no longer gave her comfort. The silence pressed on her ears until she whispered to herself, "What have I become?" She remembered her husband's cold words months ago. "You think power is respect, but all you do is push people away." At the time, she had dismissed him. Now, the words stung like truth. Her mask of pride was cracking, but she still clung to it. Apologizing meant lowering herself, admitting she was wrong, and that was something she had never done. Yet, deep in her heart, a truth grew harder to ignore. If she wanted peace, if she wanted dignity, she would have to face the very woman she had humiliated. Weeks after the Labor Day ceremony, another gathering was organized in the city, a dinner banquet to honor workers and donors alike. The hall glowed with golden chandeliers, and the air hummed with music and chatter. Influential figures in politics, business, and community service filled the seats. Amina was invited as a special guest. She arrived in a borrowed dress, simple yet dignified, her children by her side, their eyes wide at the grandeur of the hall. To her, the honor was overwhelming but humbling. She carried herself with quiet grace, as though the place had always belonged to her. Across the room, Claudia entered, dressed in a glittering gown, her head held high but her heart pounding, her stomach twisted as her eyes landed on Amina. For days, she had debated whether to attend. Pride told her to stay away. But something stronger had pushed her here, an ache she could no longer silence. The evening unfolded with speeches and applause. As Claudia sat at her table, she barely tasted her food. Her gaze kept drifting to Amina, who laughed gently with her children, radiating peace. Every laugh pierced Claudia's chest. How can she sit there, so calm, after what I did to her? She thought. The memory of the slap weighed heavily, and with every passing minute, her walls of arrogance weakened. When the announcer called Claudia's name to receive recognition for her charitable contributions, she rose on trembling legs. The spotlight hit her, and the applause felt empty. For the first time in her life, she realized the honor meant nothing, not when her conscience was stained. She accepted the plaque with a forced smile, but when she turned to face the audience, her throat closed. Her eyes landed on Amina again, and suddenly her vision blurred with tears. Claudia gripped the microphone, her hands shaking. The room fell silent, waiting for her polished speech. But instead, words stumbled out, raw and unprepared. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here honored tonight, but my heart is heavy. Whispers rippled through the hall. Claudia's voice trembled as she continued. Some of you know me as a successful woman, a giver, a leader. But behind this image is a truth I can no longer hide. She paused, her chest heaving as tears threatened to fall. There is someone in this very room whom I wronged deeply. I humiliated her in public, treating her as though her dignity was beneath mine. I raised my hand against her, not because she deserved it, but because I was blinded by pride. The hall went still. All eyes shifted between Claudia and Amina. Claudia's voice cracked. That woman is Amina, the tricycle rider honored here tonight. And before all of you, I want to say, I am sorry. Gasps echoed through the hall. Claudia's tears finally broke free, streaming down her cheeks. She placed the plaque aside, her knees almost buckling under the weight of her confession. Every eye turned to Amina. Her children clung to her hands, wide-eyed at the spectacle. Slowly, she rose, her face calm, her presence quiet but powerful. She walked toward Claudia, each step filled with dignity. Reaching the stage, she stood before the woman who had once struck her. For a moment, silence reigned, thick with tension. Then Amina spoke softly, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Madam, I forgave you long before tonight. Claudia's lips trembled. How? How could you forgive me after all I did? Because holding on to anger, Amina replied, would have only chained me to pain. I chose peace for myself, for my children, for the God who gives us strength. Her words struck the audience like thunder wrapped in tenderness. Some wiped their eyes, others nodded in awe. The hall erupted not in gossip or judgment, but in applause. A standing ovation swept through the room, not only for Amina's grace but also for the raw humility of Claudia's confession. Claudia wept openly, collapsing into Amina's embrace. For the first time in years, she felt free, not because the crowd accepted her, but because the woman she had wronged had released her from the prison of guilt. As they stood together, one in shimmering wealth, the other in simple grace, the audience saw not two divided women, but two souls bound by a powerful truth. Dignity does not come from wealth, nor pride, nor applause. It comes from humility, forgiveness, and the courage to change. The days after the banquet marked the beginning of a quiet transformation in Claudia's life. The woman who once strutted in glittering gowns, sneering at those she considered beneath her, now walked with gentler steps. Her mornings, once filled with vanity and endless calls about parties, became dedicated to visiting schools, labor unions, and small communities. She listened, truly listened, for the first time in her life. Each story of hardship humbled her. Each handshake with a worker softened her hardened heart. She began sponsoring scholarships for children of laborers, started small businesses for widows, and used her influence to push for fairer wages. The society pages still mentioned her name, but no longer for her arrogance. They spoke of her unexpected humility. At home, Claudia faced her own family. The walls of silence between her and her estranged sister finally crumbled as she confessed her faults with tears, not excuses. Slowly, forgiveness flowed back into her personal life, just as it had in public. For the first time in years, she no longer felt alone. For Amina, life continued with its struggles, but everything had changed. Her tricycle, once a symbol of mere survival, became a badge of honor. People who had once overlooked her now greeted her with respect. Her children walked taller, proud of the mother who had been honored not only for her hard work but for her dignity. To them, she wasn't just a tricycle rider, she was a hero. Though Amina never sought fame, Her story spread through the city. Schools invited her to speak. Churches and community halls called her to share her journey. Everywhere she went, she carried the same message. Dignity is not given by wealth or status. It is lived through honesty, hard work, and forgiveness. She remained humble, never letting attention change her. Her tricycle still rattled along the streets, still carrying passengers, but now it also carried the weight of hope for others like her. The city remembered the scandal of a slap, but even more, it remembered the miracle of forgiveness. Two women from opposite worlds, one draped in diamonds, the other in sweat, had crossed paths in bitterness, but parted in grace. Claudia's pride had been shattered, but in its place grew compassion. Amina's dignity had been tested, but it shone brighter than ever. On a quiet afternoon weeks later, Claudia visited Amina's modest home. They sat together not as enemies, not even as rich and poor, but simply as women who had faced their flaws and found strength in one another. Their laughter filled the room, light and unforced. For once, Claudia did not feel the need to be admired, and Amina did not feel the sting of being belittled. They were equals, bound by a truth bigger than themselves. The story of Claudia and Amina became more than just gossip in the city. It became a lesson whispered from mother to child, from teacher to student, from leader to follower, that the true measure of a person is not in their wealth or beauty, but in their humility, their respect for others, and their willingness to forgive. And so, two women who once stood on opposite sides of pride and pain became living proof that forgiveness is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength.